It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It's been too long. Mr. Tim Jacob is on the line Tim, tell us what it is. Is it still Arkansas term limits or restore term limits? What website should we put up on the screen here for our listeners?
It is arkansastermlimits.org.
Okay. arkansastermlimits.org. All right, so let's start here, Tim, because I know we want to get term limits back to where they are. I know that's still what you guys are trying to do, but the reason we are here is because of Senator Jon Woods. Senator Jon Woods was found guilty last week, 15 of 17 counts. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm not celebrating. It's a sad day in Arkansas anytime corruption like this is exposed. I'm glad it is exposed, but the corruption itself is just a sad state of affairs. But not only was he found guilty of the fraud and corruption, there is the major fraud that we're working on right now that we need to rescind the fraud that was perpetrated on the voters of this state. And I'm praying for his family, and we hope that he's turned around, and I'm not sure what the type of sentence it is, but the people of Arkansas have been sentenced to longer term limits, to paying their legislators 3 times as much because of an amendment that the biggest newspaper in our state called the outrage of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to get back, and we're trying to work around the state right now to get 100,000 signatures. We're almost at the threshold of the 82,000 that we have to have, but we, as you know, we have to go over that to make sure that the powers that be don't try to throw out signatures and all that. So we're trying to restore term limits in our state to what it was for 22 years before Jon Woods and Warwick Sabin and the rest of the legislature put this issue 3 forward in 2014.
So the guy who wrote this, I mean, it was Jon Woods that wrote this ethics amendment, and I love how the Democrat Gazette's first paragraph when they did report on the conviction of Jon Woods was a guy whose legacy in the state of Arkansas is an ethics amendment goes to jail for basically stealing the taxpayer, laundering money, and everything else. So I thought that was fitting. But let's not forget, the attorney who was really involved with medical marijuana, for example. You had David Couch, who was involved with this, and he opposed your efforts to repeal the term limit expansion, to put it back the way it was. And so I guess this was the last election cycle. You had the term limits petition going around, and you had the medical marijuana petitions going around. And what happened, Tim? What did they tell the signature gatherers who were trying to make an honest living?
Well, they told them that if they were working to restore term limits, that they would not accept any other work by them, and they would not allow them to work on any other petition. It was almost a poison pill for them to work for the people and to try to restore term limits.
Wow. I mean,
there are powerful people in this state, and powerful people in the legislatures that just hate term limits. And I don't mind having a debate about this. I think we need a debate about this. We've debated it for a long time, and the people of Arkansas are crystal clear on what they want. There's no doubt that the legislature knows the feeling of the people, but they just refuse to represent us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you go over the history, when the initial term limits bill or law went into effect and what the overwhelming majority of the people of Arkansas said?
Yeah, in 1992, citizens around the state gathered petitions. In a second time, an all-volunteer effort reached the ballot. Term limits got on the ballot in 1992 and became the largest single yes vote in Arkansas history. In 2004, legislators tried to double their term, just the same thing that Jon Woods did eventually. They tried to double their term in a term limits amendment, and the people of Arkansas, by 70% of the vote, said no. That's a landslide in anybody's book. 75 of 75 counties said no to the legislature. They know how Arkansas voters feel about this issue. They know how voters feel about this issue all over the country, and they refuse to acquiesce to the voters' will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really their job. As representatives, they're supposed to represent us.
Yep.
And if they have a differing opinion, they should come out, stand up, be honest about it, and tell us why we should double their terms. But the way they did it in 2014, and Jon Woods was a big part of this, is they hid it in the longest amendment in Arkansas history, and they hid it on page 16. They wouldn't put it on the ballot title, and it's about honesty and transparency. And the fact that that was called the Ethics Amendment in 2014 is it borders on irony that can't be believed.
Yeah, we were lied to by Senator Jon Woods, and we were tricked. And that's the thing. I get politicians all the time that want to have the term limits debate, about how powerful the bureaucracies are and how they need to be down there a little longer in order to get a handle on things. And look, that's the argument they want to have. I disagree with them, but that's the argument they want to have. So we could have the argument. I'm like you, but let's not ignore the fact that the reason the term limits are the way they are now is because the people of Arkansas were tricked. And by legislative sleight of hand, what was on that amendment, it made you think you were getting term limits when we already had them. And that is so wrong and unethical in an ethics amendment.
Well, that's exactly right, Paul. And, I love listening to your show, and it's just great that you're on in the Little Rock area now. But you're exposing and bringing to light a lot of the things in the legislature. These legislators don't mind having that debate now. They refused to have that debate in 2014. In fact, when they put that amendment on there, on the ballot, there was no press conferences, no press releases, no advertisements. It was a campaign of silence, and that's not the way we want to do business here.
Boy, it does seem like that's the Arkansas way, though. I know that's not what the people want, but gosh, that seems exactly the way things are. So what are the plans now, Tim? What are your goals? I know you got to get over the 80,000 because they're going to throw a bunch of the signatures out. But where do we stand right now, and what can people do to sign this petition and try to get this on the ballot?
Well, Tom Steele is a resident of Little Rock, and he has taken up this mantle. I'm doing some radio spots, and I'm going out and giving some speeches. But Tom Steele is really the mover and shaker behind this. He's done an absolutely wonderful job of getting signatures. We're at about 82,000 right now. But for the next 2 months, we need a push. And if you want to get involved and try to get term limits restored to what it was for the 22 years before 2014, before the legislator unleashed their fraud on us, please call 501-590-8260, and we will get you some petitions, or go to our website, arkansastermlimits.org, download the petition. We need as many signatures from as many caring Arkansans as we can. The voters of this state have spoken twice in a loud voice in the landslide elections of how they feel about term limits, and I think the voters should be listened to. That's not too much to ask that representatives listen to the voters. But please go to arkansastermlimits.org, get involved, participate, and let's keep a good watchful eye on these people in Little Rock. They seem to be, they just seem to not care about the will of the people here.
Yeah.
And on this issue, it's crystal clear that the will of the people is for stricter term limits, not tripling of their pay and doubling their terms.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so fitting, and I know I'm bringing it back to Jon Woods and his conviction and the fraud that he stole from the people, and a lot of people knew it for a really long time, and yet issue 3 of 2014 went ahead anyway and was passed, and it just was. We're still recovering from, and my sad thing is as a limited government conservative. And if we're starting to look at what Republican leadership looks like, we're amassing a record that is kind of indefensible, and it's really. I'm getting worried about it. I think there could be a huge backlash eventually. When people look at the whole body of work, and you've increased your pay, now you've increased your term limits, now you're increasing spending, you're increasing taxes. These things are things that the people are paying attention to. That number that Tim gave out was 501-590-8260. If you want to call about Arkansas term limits, again, the website, though, arkansastermlimits.org. Tim Jacob, I'm going to give you the last word, sir.
Well, I encourage everybody to participate. The rules of this state should be by the voters of this state. The legislature are our servants. They are our employees. They don't need to have the last word on term limits. Term limits was put in because of them, not to provide a comfortable living for them up in Little Rock. We need to make sure that we participate and we have a watchful eye. We've found out that term limits, when politicians are term limited, they spend less of our money. Imagine that.
And that's the key. Yeah, we have to give them less money to steal. Tim Jacob, I appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much for being with us.
I appreciate you, Paul.
All righty, folks. The website again, arkansastermlimits.org. arkansastermlimits.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we have Republican gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan to take a victory lap for saving the people of Arkansas's tax dollars. That's right. Because of her, the grocery tax increase plan has been torpedoed, at least for now. We'll have her on at 7:33, and I'm going to go over this article over at conduitforaction.org, giving her the credit. Back in just a moment.